Elena's smile softened. We want you to meet our son. We want you to consider becoming his wife. For a moment, the room spun. Linda blinked, sure she had misheard. She let out a short, incredulous laugh. His wife? Me? Yes, George said firmly. We believe you are the kind of woman who could change him. You are not like the others. You value family, respect, integrity. These are things money cannot buy. Our son, he needs that. Linda felt heat rush to her cheeks. She stood abruptly, shaking her head. With respect, sir, ma'am, I cannot accept this. Maximus Alexander, he has been married 4 times already. What makes you think I would succeed where others failed? Because you are not them, Elena replied. But Linda's voice sharpened. Or perhaps because you think I am desperate enough to tolerate what they could not? Forgive me, but I will not sell myself for wealth. I am a teacher. I know who I am. Silence followed, heavy and charged. Her parents shifted uncomfortably, caught between admiration for their daughter's courage and fear of insulting powerful guests. George stepped forward, his gaze steady. Young lady, we are not asking you to sell yourself. We are asking you to open your heart to possibility. You do not have to decide tonight, but at least agree to meet him once. Linda folded her arms. And if I say no, then we will respect your choice, Elena said, though her eyes pleaded. But please, think of it. Destiny sometimes comes in strange ways. The evening sky over Lagos was a shimmering canvas of gold and violet when the news broke. Every television screen, every smartphone feed, and every gossip blog carried the same headline. Billionaire Maximus Alexander divorces again after just 8 months. The anchor's voice rang sharp with excitement, as if she were reporting a global crisis. This marks the 4th failed marriage for Nigeria's youngest investment mogul, whose fortune and influence stretch across oil, tech, and finance. Sources close to the family cite irreconcilable differences. Once again, the Alexander Empire faces whispers of scandal. Across the city, reactions spread like wildfire. In salons on Victoria Island, women shook their heads over glasses of champagne. So much money, so little happiness, one murmured, the smell of freshly applied relaxer filling the air. At Lekki cafes, young men leaned over their cappuccinos, laughing with disbelief. 4 marriages in 6 years? That man must be cursed, another said, scrolling through Instagram posts of Maximus's ex-wives. Models, actresses, women whose beauty had once stunned Lagos society. On buses packed with commuters, the story became small talk that carried from Mile 2 to Obalende. Housewives sighed, taxi drivers chuckled, and in hushed tones, people repeated the word curse, as though his wealth had been built on something dark that love could never touch. But inside the glittering glass penthouse perched above Banana Island's marina, the man at the center of the storm sat in silence. Maximus Alexander, 35, owner of Alexander Global Holdings, looked every inch the Billionaire magazines adored. Broad-shouldered, tall, with sharp cheekbones and a jaw sculpted for power, he seemed carved out of the luxury that surrounded him. His black silk shirt clung perfectly to his frame, the soft glow of recessed lighting bouncing off polished marble floors. Behind him, the floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the Lagos Lagoon, sparkling with city lights. His garage below was a shrine to machines most people would never touch: sleek Bentleys, rare Ferraris, a custom Rolls-Royce built exclusively for him. Yet despite the empire, the adulation, the fortune, Maximus felt only a familiar emptiness. He switched off the television, cutting off the voice of the anchor mid-sentence, and leaned back in his leather chair. No anger, no regret, not even relief. Just a void that mocked him. They were all the same, he told himself. Women who saw the glamour of being Mrs. Alexander, who whispered words of loyalty but revealed hunger for his wealth and reputation. Clara, Vanessa, Leah, Sophia, the names blurred into a carousel of broken promises and courtroom settlements. His lawyers joked that he should put marriage contracts in the same folder as oil deals. Short-term, negotiable, dissolvable. He told himself he was protecting his heart. But each failed marriage had added a crack to his reputation and an ache to his soul. Across the city in a quieter Ikoyi estate shaded by ancient almond trees, George and Elena Alexander sat together in their warm, candlelit dining room. The Alexander matriarch's eyes were swollen from weeping. She clutched her husband's hand tightly. 4 marriages, George, Elena whispered, her voice trembling. 4 women in 6 years, each one shorter than the last. What is happening to our son? George, a man in his early 60s, once the titan of investment banking, rubbed his temples. The weight of legacy sat heavy on his shoulders. His voice was rough, lined with both pride and regret. I raised him to be strong, to command respect. I gave him everything, education abroad, a company to run, power at his fingertips. But maybe we also raised him to be cold. Elena shook her head, her pearls catching the glow of the chandelier. It is as if there is a shadow following him. People are beginning to whisper that our family is cursed. Even in church, George, the pastor hinted at it. A man so young, so successful, and yet incapable of keeping a wife. What kind of legacy is that? George's jaw tightened. Maximus doesn't believe in curses. He believes in numbers, mergers, contracts. But you are right. Something is wrong. He doesn't know how to keep a heart. He knows only how to conquer and let go. For a moment, silence filled the grand room, broken only by the ticking of the antique grandfather clock. A gift from George's father, a reminder of time's merciless pace. Elena thought of her childhood, far from Lagos's skyscrapers, in a small riverside town where life was simple. There, marriages lasted, families stayed whole. People built love not with gold, but with shared laughter, with resilience, with prayers whispered under the moon. Elena's voice grew firm. George, maybe we have been looking in the wrong place. Maximus chooses women from this city, models, actresses, socialites, women who love the spotlight more than the man. Perhaps he needs someone different, a woman who is not blinded by wealth, a woman who knows respect, who values family more than fame. Maybe then he will learn what love truly means. George looked at her in surprise. You mean, not from his world? Yes, Elena said, her eyes hardening with sudden clarity. From outside the glitter, from the places where values are not for sale. Maybe it sounds absurd, but I believe only such a woman can reach him. If not, our son will grow old, richer than kings, but utterly alone. George leaned back in his chair, his gaze heavy. He had spent decades negotiating billion-dollar deals, but the idea of arranging his son's heart unsettled him more than any hostile takeover. Maximus will laugh at us, he said at last. Then let him laugh, Elena replied, steel in her tone. Better laughter than watching him waste his soul. That night, while the city pulsed with rooftop parties and champagne spilled in Victoria Island lounges, Maximus stood on the balcony of his penthouse. The wind lifted his hair, cool against his face, as he stared at the lagoon lights flickering like distant stars. In his mind, the faces of his wives returned one by one, Clara with her flawless Instagram smiles and endless demands for parties, Vanessa, whose love for luxury boutiques outweighed her interest in conversation, Leah, who tried to mother him only to drown in resentment, and Sophia, his college sweetheart, who once loved him deeply but left bitter when she realized he would never reveal the vulnerable parts of himself. Each relationship had begun with fire and ended with legal documents. He had become mechanical about it, detached. Love was a contract, marriage a merger, divorce an inevitable audit. His phone buzzed. For a moment he considered ignoring it, but guilt, a rare flicker of it, made him swipe. "Hello, Mother," he said. Elena's voice, soft but firm, came through the line. "Maximus, we need to talk. Your father and I are worried." Maximus sighed, his tone cool. "I know what this is about. Please, not tonight. I don't need another lecture." "This is not a lecture," she said. "It's about your life, about the emptiness swallowing you. Do you even want happiness? Happiness, Maximus repeated with a bitter laugh. Mother, happiness is an illusion. People change, feelings die. Marriage is a contract, and contracts end. That's all. Her silence was heavy, pressing through the phone like a weight. Then she said with quiet resolve, "We are coming to see you tomorrow. There is something you must hear." Before he could protest, she ended the call. Maximus lowered the phone slowly, staring into the Lagos skyline. His parents rarely demanded anything of him. Whatever they had planned, he knew it would not be a simple conversation. And for the first time in years, beneath a polished arrogance, a thread of unease tugged at his heart. The air in Surulere was cooler that evening, heavy with the scent of roasted corn drifting from a roadside stall. The suburb was far from the gleaming towers of Victoria Island, but Linda Oha preferred it that way. Her life was simple, measured not by the cars in her driveway or the labels on her clothes, but by the smiles of the children who crowded into her classroom each morning. At 24, she had built a rhythm of quiet purpose. Her modest apartment was a single-story flat in a compound of faded yellow buildings, where children played football with plastic bottles, and neighbors greeted one another by name. She owned only a few dresses, most of them cotton and sensible, but she wore them with the kind of grace money couldn't buy. In her small living room, the wooden shelves sagged with worn books, a collection of fairy tales and mathematics guides she used for her students. That evening, she sat cross-legged on the rug, marking exercise books by candlelight because the power had gone out again. The soft glow made her look younger, but her eyes carried a maturity beyond her years. Every red tick she scribbled was precise, every note written with care. Her students were not just pupils to her. They were seeds, and she believed each one carried the potential to grow into greatness. Her mother, Esther Oha, pushed open the door softly. She had been in the kitchen preparing dinner, and her wrapper smelled faintly of palm oil. "Linda, my daughter," she said gently, "leave those books for now. Come and eat." Linda looked up and smiled faintly. "I'll finish this last set, Mama. Tomorrow they'll expect their books back." Esther shook her head. "You work too hard. Who will take care of you if you pour everything into others?" Before Linda could answer, the sound of a car horn echoed from outside the compound. Not the rickety sound of the Danfoss that rattled through the street every day, but something smoother, heavier. Curious, Linda set down her pen. Moments later, her father entered, his brows furrowed, his expression unreadable. Behind him, two elegantly dressed visitors stepped in, their presence so out of place in the humble flat that silence fell like a stone. It was George and Elena Alexander. Linda rose instinctively, smoothing down her simple dress. She had seen their faces before, on television, in glossy society magazines. The Alexanders were part of Nigeria's elite, their names spoken with reverence in boardrooms. What could such people want in her parents' modest home? "Good evening," Elena said with a warm smile, her diamond earrings catching the faint light. "We hope we are not intruding." "You are welcome," Esther replied quickly, her voice tinged with nervous respect. She pulled chairs closer, offering the couple a seat. George declined with a wave of his hand. "We will not stay long. We came with something important to discuss." His deep voice filled the small room, commanding attention. Linda glanced at her father, who cleared his throat. "Linda, sit down," he said softly. She obeyed, her heart beginning to race. George exchanged a glance with his wife before speaking. "You may have heard about our son, Maximus Alexander." Linda stiffened. Everyone in Lagos had heard. The man was a headline magnet, first for his brilliance in business, then for his string of failed marriages. He was the subject of whispers, the darling of tabloids, the embodiment of both power and scandal. "We have watched you, Linda," Elena said gently. "Your family is known to us through old friends. We know of your work, your humility, your character. That is why we are here." Linda's brows furrowed. "Why you are here," she repeated cautiously. Elena's smile softened. "We want you to meet our son. We want you to consider becoming his wife." For a moment, the room spun. Linda blinked, sure she had misheard, She let out a short, incredulous laugh. His wife? Me? Yes, George said firmly. We believe you are the kind of woman who could change him. You are not like the others. You value family, respect, integrity. These are things money cannot buy. Our son, he needs that. Linda felt heat rush to her cheeks. She stood abruptly, shaking her head. With respect, sir, ma'am, I cannot accept this. Maximus Alexander, he has been married 4 times already. What makes you think I would succeed where others failed? Because you are not them, Elena replied. But Linda's voice sharpened. Or perhaps because you think I am desperate enough to tolerate what they could not? Forgive me, but I will not sell myself for wealth. I am a teacher. I know who I am. Silence followed, heavy and charged. Her parents shifted uncomfortably, caught between admiration for their daughter's courage and fear of insulting powerful guests. George stepped forward, his gaze steady. Young lady, we are not asking you to sell yourself. We are asking you to open your heart to possibility. You do not have to decide tonight, but at least agree to meet him once. Linda folded her arms. And if I say no, then we will respect your choice, Elena said, though her eyes pleaded. But please, think of it. Destiny sometimes comes in strange ways. The Alexanders left soon after, their perfume lingering in the small apartment long after their black SUV disappeared into the night. When the door closed, Linda whirled on her parents. How could you even entertain such madness? He is a man with a trail of broken vows. He brings shame to women. And you think I should be the next? Her mother's voice trembled. Linda, they are powerful people. Do not dismiss this so quickly. Her father added, Child, sometimes life offers us doors we do not expect. A man like Maximus has everything, yet he is lost. Perhaps it is not madness to think you could show him a different way. Linda's laughter was bitter. So I should sacrifice myself for his redemption? No, I am not a charity project. She stormed into her room, slamming the door. Later that night, when the house had quieted, Linda sat on her bed, staring at the cracked ceiling. Her emotions battled each other. Anger, disbelief, and something else she did not want to name. Was it curiosity? Or the faint echo of destiny her parents spoke of? She pictured Maximus, tall, cold-eyed, the man who turned love into contracts. What would a woman like her mean to him? Would he laugh at her simplicity? Would he crush her spirit with his arrogance? And yet, what if she was wrong? Her mother's words whispered in her memory. Sometimes life offers us doors we do not expect. Linda hugged her knees to her chest. She had built her world on certainty, on chalkboards and children's laughter, on small victories measured in spelling tests and multiplication tables. But tonight her world trembled. If destiny was indeed knocking, it had come in the form of the most dangerous offer of her life. The SUV glided past jacaranda trees and sculpted hedges, then slowed at a set of bronze gates that opened like a secret. Linda watched the world rearrange itself outside the tinted glass, security cameras perched like discreet birds, a circular driveway polished to a mirror sheen, a water feature rising in quiet tears. Ikoi's hush felt expensive, the kind that money purchased and guards protected. She smoothed the skirt of her simple navy dress, knuckles whitening around the handle of her tote. She had packed modestly, 2 dresses, a cardigan, flats, a slim Bible, and a leather case filled with lesson plans she couldn't leave behind. The driver, silent all morning, stepped out and opened her door. Miss Oha, he said with a courteous nod. We're here. Here. The word felt too small for the glass palace that rose before her, 3 stories of light and steel, its facade reflecting clouds like a captive sky. A butler waited beneath a cantilevered awning, hands clasped, posture perfect. He did not smile. He didn't frown either. He simply existed in that expensive way that meant he noticed everything and judged nothing, at least not where anyone could see. Welcome to Alexander House, he said, British vowels polished to a shine. I am Price. Please, follow me. Inside, cool air, stone floors, art that looked like storms frozen mid-spiral. A scent of something restrained, white florals and salt perhaps, as if the ocean itself had been decanted into a crystal bottle. The living room was double height, glass on two sides, and on a third, a wall-length bookcase that made Linda exhale in surprise of pleasure. First editions, leather spines, a ladder on brass rails, a house of glass and a wall of words. It made no sense and perfect sense all at once. Price led her past a floating staircase to a formal sitting area arranged like a magazine spread. There he was. Maximus Alexander did not rise. He occupied an ash-gray sofa like a verdict, one ankle resting over the opposite knee, black shirt open at the throat. Sunlight cut across his cheekbones. His eyes, when they lifted, were as expressionless as weathered marble. "So," he said, not unkindly, "just bored. This is the famous Linda." Linda's fingers found the seam of her tote and held fast. "Good afternoon," she said. Her voice tried to be neutral and almost made it. Maximus's gaze traveled from her bun to her flats and returned to her face. "I see my parents still enjoy their charity projects." The words landed softly and cut anyway. Linda felt the sting but refused to flinch. "If this is charity," she said, "I suppose the beneficiary should be the one to say thank you." A corner of his mouth twitched, the shadow of a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Clever. Cute." He leaned back. "Price, show Miss Oha the guest suite, the small one." The small one was the size of Linda's entire apartment block. She stood in the doorway as Price narrated controls. Blinds, climate, a tablet that ordered everything from tea to tailors. The bed was a pale sea of linen. Beyond the glass, a lap pool cleaved the courtyard like a blade. "If you require anything," Price concluded, "press the bell." "Thank you," Linda said. She waited until the door clicked shut to exhale. Then she crossed to the window and placed her forehead against the cool glass. "You came on your own feet," she told herself. "You will stand on them." She unpacked briskly, dresses in the wardrobe, flats lined like patient punctuation. Lesson plans stacked on the desk. She texted her mother, "I arrived safely." "I'm fine," she deleted. "I'm frightened" before it could betray her. When she returned to the sitting room, Maximus was where she had left him, except now a sleek laptop and a crystal tumbler had joined him like courtiers. He didn't look up. "Sit," he said. She did, perching on the opposite sofa, palms flat to still their tremor. "We are going to be very clear," he said. "My parents wanted this." He gestured lazily between them. "I acquiesced to spare them lectures and public theatrics. We are not going to pretend this is romantic." "I had no plans to pretend," Linda said quietly. "Good." His eyes sharpened with the first sign of interest. "You will not enter my study uninvited. You will not attempt to manage my schedule. You will not interrupt me during calls, meals, or anything." "Anything is broad," Linda said. "Trust me," he replied, soft as a thread. "You will know it when you see it." She felt a flicker of heat in her face and smothered it. "And what will you do?" He blinked. "Excuse me? What will you do?" she repeated, steady now. "Beyond making rules for me, will you try, even a little, to make this something less humiliating for both of us?" He considered her. "You are very local," he said at last, voice drifting toward idle cruelty. "The way you speak about trying, as if marriage were a community project. This world," he gestured toward the glass and steel, "isn't built on try. It is built on control." "I teach 8-year-olds, Linda said. "They are built on try. They still outrun you." For the second time, that almost smile threatened. He put it away. "Dinner is at 8. Wear something that doesn't apologize." He stood. "And Linda?" "Yes?" "Do not mistake my parents' sentimentality for my weakness. You are here because I permitted it." The words should have crushed. They arranged themselves into a scaffolding instead. Linda nodded once. "I understood the moment I walked in." He left her with the city beyond the glass, a braid of roads and light. She sat there for a while, spine tall, pulse stubborn. She would not cry here. She would not give this room her tears. At 7:30, she stood before the wardrobe and chose the dress that fit like a promise. Ink blue, modest neckline, a narrow belt that found her waist without fanfare. She left her hair down, then second-guessed and braided it, then loosened the braid so it spilled like a soft rope over one's shoulder. When she checked the mirror, she looked like herself, only steadier. The dining room belonged in a film, a table long enough for history lessons, a sculpture in burnished brass like a question mark, candles in low-glass cups. Maximus arrived without sound, as if the air had decided to arrange itself into a man. He glanced at her. Something like approval flickered and died. "Better," he said. "Sit." Courses came and went. Citrus-kissed salad, sea bass that broke under the fork, tiny pavlovas like edible clouds. He ate efficiently, as if the chef's art were merely a task to dispatch. He asked nothing. He offered nothing. Linda maintained dignified silence, answering when Price asked if she wanted tea, declining when Maximus waved more wine toward her glass like a casual command. When the clock skimmed past 9, the doorbell chimed. Not the bell of deliveries. This one was chime and laughter wrapped together. Maximus's mouth curved, truly this time. "My guess," he said. 2 women swept in with the breeze, all perfume and high heels and hungry curiosity. One was glitter, sequins, a laugh like shaken ice. The other was silk, bone-straight hair, a neckline designed to make men forget their arguments. They air-kissed Maximus, leaving the faintest damp ghosts of lipstick near his jaw, and pretended not to notice Linda at the end of the table. He glanced toward Linda and then away, a dismissal executed with surgical economy. "Drinks in the lounge," he told the women. 5 minutes. They floated out, trailing the scent of money well spent. Maximus turned back to Linda. "You can go," he said. "Price will arrange something for you to do. Perhaps the library. I remember you people like books." "You people." The phrase flicked like a whip. Linda rose slowly, stacking her napkin with care. "Enjoy your evening," she said, because she refused to leave without the armor of courtesy. In the hallway, she paused by the library and let her fingertips graze the ladder's brass rail. The music began. Lounge beats with a pulse meant for dim rooms and easy sins. Laughter poured across the marble. Glass clinked. A woman's voice lilted. "Maximus, you are terrible." His reply lowered into a velvet growl she could not make out and did not want to. Linda walked past the library, past the pool, into the courtyard garden, where night jasmine leaned over the stone with open mouths. She sank onto a bench and pressed her palms together until the bones complained. "This is not your definition," she told herself. "This house, his shadows, his rules. He says you are here because he permitted it. But you came because you chose to test strength against arrogance. And because 2 people who have loved longer than you have lived think there is something here worth saving." The laughter inside peaked, then softened. A single glass shattered. Apologies. A hush. Music again. "You don't belong," a quiet voice whispered from that treacherous part of her mind that sounded like fear. "Not in this dress among these walls. Not in a life where kindness must be scheduled." Linda lifted her chin to the slice of sky between rooflines. Lagos breathed out there. Horns, tides, 1,000 kitchens closing. She breathed with it. Price found her an hour later. "Miss Oha," he said softly. "Can I bring you tea?" "No," she said. "Just thank you." He hesitated, then inclined his head. "If I may, ma'am, the library door locks from the inside." He did not look at her as he said it. "It is very quiet." "Thank you, Price." She waited until he left, then walked back in. The lounge glowed, low lamps, long legs crossing, Maximus's laugh scratching like a match. No one noticed her ghost across the back of the room. She slipped into the library and turned the lock. The quiet rose around her like a tide. She pulled a book at random, something about a man who traveled oceans and discovered he had been running from himself. She read the same paragraph 3 times and remembered none of it. At midnight, the music died. Doors murmured. Goodbyes. Car engines. The soft whine of a gate in motion. Footsteps paused outside the library, then moved on without knocking. In the silence that followed, Linda heard her own heartbeat. Stubborn, steady, very much her own. She pressed her forehead to the cool spine of the book and let the smallest tear fall. Not for him, not for humiliation, but for the simple grief of being unseen. Then she wiped it away and squared her shoulders. His arrogance would not be the architect of her ruin. But as she slid the book back into its gap and turned off the lamp, a question settled on her tongue like a bitter lozenge. How long could a heart endure a house that refused to notice it was beating? Saturday arrived with a blue, forgiving sky, the kind that made Ikoyi look like a postcard pressed under glass. Linda rose early, braided her hair, and opened the terrace doors to the garden. The jasmine was still half asleep, the pool a long silver breath. She set out 2 extra place settings in the breakfast nook herself, small acts of hospitality in a house where everything appeared by magic and vanished the same way. They were supposed to arrive at 10. At 9:55, the gate camera blinked to life on the kitchen tablet. A bright sundress, a wide grin, a wave at the lens. Ruth Hale, freckled cheekbones, almond eyes, a heart that had always sat too close to her skin. Behind her, a second figure slid into frame. Gwen Parker, glossed lips, a dress that fought modesty and won, sunglasses that reflected the sky like a mirror that never gave anything back. Linda met them at the front steps. Ruth's squeal broke across the marble like sunlight. "Oh my God, look at you!" she cried, folding Linda into a hug so tight the world went briefly dim. "You live in a movie." Gwen smiled with professional warmth and air-kissed the air near Linda's cheek. "Stunning. Architectural Digest would fight to death for this foyer." "It's just a house," Linda said, even though the ceilings were cathedral high and the staircase floated like a ribbon. "Come in. You must be tired." They weren't. Ruth wanted to see everything, touching the spines of books in the library, stealing a grape from a bowl like a child. Gwen wanted to see something else. She lingered by the wall of photographs, black and white portraits of Maximus with heads of state and art world darlings, pretending to admire composition while gauging the weight of a dynasty. "Is he here?" Gwen asked, too casual. "The man of the legend?" Linda kept her voice even. "He is. He's working." Ruth looped an arm through Linda's. "Come, show me the garden before I faint from envy." They walked the stone path lined with birds of paradise, Ruth chattering about everything, her new job, a neighbor's troublesome cat, a viral video of a toddler scolding a goat. Gwen followed, phone in hand, eyes flicking, storing, comparing. In the shade of an umbrella pine, Linda breathed a little easier. Ruth's laughter loosened something she had kept knotted tight since the night of sequins and silk. Friendship was oxygen. Even measured in sips, it sustained. Lunch was light, grilled prawns, mint salad, tart lemon tarts that looked like yellow moons. Halfway through, a low footfall sounded in the hall. The air changed before the door opened. Maximus stepped in, all clean lines and deliberation, as if the room had been waiting for him. "Maximus," Linda said, standing, "these are my friends, Ruth and Gwen." He inclined his head, the diplomat in him unfolding like a pocket square. "Welcome." Ruth, who had vowed not to stare, stared. "It's nice to meet you," she said, then added inexplicably, "You look taller in person." A real smile touched Maximus's mouth. "I'll take that as a compliment." Gwen's smile sharpened. "We've heard a lot," she said, letting the hook gleam in the water. "The city never stops talking." "The city needs new hobbies," Maximus replied mildly. He turned to Linda. "Price says you set the table yourself." "I did," Linda said. "It felt human." "Keep corrupting my systems," he murmured, and for a second the ice under his voice thinned enough to show water. He stayed for coffee, rare, surprising, polite. Ruth told a story that made Linda laugh until she forgot herself. Gwen said little, watching the subtle geometry of attention. The way Maximus's gaze drifted toward Linda when she laughed. How Linda angled her face toward him when she spoke without meaning to. How the temperature of the air seemed to answer to currents that didn't ask permission. By 3, the sun was high, and the visit had settled into an easy rhythm. Ruth helped Price clear teacups, humming off key. Gwen asked to freshen up, and Linda pointed down the corridor to the powder room beside Maximus's study. Gwen's smile lifted at one corner. She did not go to the powder room. Maximus's study door stood ajar, a shadow hinged in light. Gwen nudged it with one finger and slid inside. The room smelled like leather and weathered paper, the kind of place secrets felt at home. She closed the door gently and leaned back against it, as if she were exhausted from the effort of being desirable. He didn't look up immediately. "Powder room's the other door," he said, tapping a line on his tablet. Gwen let her voice drop a register. "Then I'm exactly where I meant to be." He glanced up. Her sunglasses were off now, and her eyes were theater, wide, wounded, practiced. "I wanted to speak, privately," she said, stepping closer. "About Linda." "No," Maximus said evenly. "You wanted to speak about yourself." Gwen laughed, low and polished. "Of course I want to speak about myself. Men like you prefer women who know their script." He sat back, expression unreadable. "You have 2 minutes." She folded onto the edge of the desk, crossing her legs in an angle engineered to derail concentration. "Linda is sweet," she began, each word placed carefully, like pearls on a string. "But she's not built for this world. She pretends not to care about the money, but trust me, she does. She always did. I've known her since we were teenagers. She knows how to look like a saint while collecting what she wants." "And what does she want?" he asked. Not because he didn't know the answer she'd give, because giving rope was sometimes the fastest way to see a noose. "You," Gwen said, honest as a lie. "Your last name, this address, the headlines." She leaned closer, perfume blooming, white flowers with a chemical spine. "A man like you deserves someone compatible, someone who won't embarrass you in rooms where you can't afford to be small." Maximus considered the woman on his desk and saw her reflection in 100 past deals, a proposition wrapped in satin, an invoice disguised as concern. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He simply turned the tablet so its screen faced her. The live feed from the study camera filled the glass, her entry, her approach, the precise angle of her sit across his desk, every syllable parceled and recorded. Gwen's smile froze, then cracked. "You record." "I secure," he said, voice quiet as snowfall. "For a living, for a life like this." She recovered swiftly. Performers always did. "Then you heard the truth," she said, pivoting to indignation. "Linda told me things you should—" He stood. The air pressure shifted. "Gwen Parker," he said, not asking. "Compliance assistant. 2 jobs in 2 years, 4 references, none of whom returned our calls. A habit of taking photographs in houses you visit. The city talks, Miss Parker, but I listen." Color climbed her throat. "You have no right." "You came into my study to lie about a woman who is not here to defend herself," he said, eyes like winter. "Then you attempted to sell yourself as an upgrade. That is not only a right I will exercise, it is a duty." The door opened behind her. Linda stood there, Ruth at her shoulder, both of them halted mid-breath by the tableau. Gwen on the desk, Maximus standing, the air thick with something that glittered like broken glass. Gwen slid off the desk, smoothing her dress, assembling outrage from whatever scraps she could find. "Linda," she cried, voice tremulous, "I came to warn him. For you. About you." Ruth's mouth fell open. "What?" Maximus didn't look away from Gwen. "Price," he called, and the butler appeared as if conjured. "Miss Parker's visit is over. Have the driver take her home. She is not to be admitted to this property again." "Maximus," Gwen said, the name a plea and a curse. "You're making a mistake." "I made many," he said, finally turning to Linda, as if the line itself were a gift meant for her alone. "This is not one of them." Gwen's composure deserted her in ragged scraps. She reached for words, failed, then settled for venom. "Enjoy your charity case," she hissed, bracelets chiming as she pushed past Ruth. "Enjoy teaching the maid to dress." Ruth flinched. Linda didn't. She watched Gwen go with a stillness that felt older than the house, older than this city, older even than the fear that had kept her polite when she should have been brave. When the front door sealed and the engine note faded, silence found the corners of the study. Ruth spoke first, voice small. I can't believe, gosh, Linda, I am so sorry. I didn't know she would." "Ruth," Linda said gently, "you are not responsible for what another person chooses." Ruth scrubbed at her cheek with the heel of her hand. "She was jealous. All this time? Of you?" Linda almost laughed. "Jealousy dresses itself in better reasons." She turned to leave, then paused, as if remembering the third person in the room, the one whose opinions were a landscape and a law. Maximus was watching her, not the way he watched strangers or threats or business news, but as if something in him were calibrating, remeasuring a distance he had assumed was fixed. "You defended me," Linda said quietly. Not triumphant, not grateful in the way supplicants are grateful to a king. Just true. His answer came without ornament. "Yes." "Why?" she asked, not daring herself, merely needing the arithmetic of it out loud. He seemed about to say because it was right, and perhaps that would have been enough. Instead, he told the harder, smaller truth. "Because she lied," he said, "and because you didn't." Linda considered that. It wasn't romance. It wasn't redemption. But it was the beginning of a line that might one day become a bridge. Ruth slipped her hand into Linda's. "Can we go anywhere that isn't this room?" she whispered. "The kitchen," Linda said, managing a smile. "I can make tea, real tea, not the kind that arrives with a waiter and a bow." They left. Maximus stayed, palms braced on the desk where Gwen's perfume had already thinned to suggestion. He looked at the tablet and didn't press play. He didn't need to. The film was in his head, the slick comment, the practiced lean, the way Linda had appeared at the door with eyes that did not plead. In the kitchen, Ruth wept ugly, relieved tears into a dish towel while Linda filled a kettle. Price pretended not to see, and then, failing at pretending, set a small plate of shortbread beside their cups with the ceremony of a treaty. "Thank you," Linda told him, and meant it twice. That night, when the house exhaled and settled, Linda stood by her window and let the city climb her. The music from a distant rooftop, the hush of traffic, stitched with laughter, the lagoon's black silk. She thought of knives that hide in smiles. She thought of shields that look like quiet. She thought of a man who had drawn a line not for love, not yet, but for truth. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even safety. But something had shifted, minutely, like a compass deciding north. For the first time since she had crossed the bronze gates, Linda let herself imagine a version of this house in which she was not a ghost. A place where defense could grow into trust, where trust might even grow into tenderness, if both of them could survive the long walk from arrogance to honesty without bleeding to death on the way. She switched off the lamp, and in the dark her vow reshaped itself, sharper than ever. His arrogance would not break her spirit, and if this new crack of light proved real, she would not let fear ruin it either. On Monday, Linda ironed a white blouse until the cotton gleamed and paired it with a navy skirt that moved when she did, not before. She ate toast by the terrace doors where the pool mirrored the sky, then tucked a leather folio under her arm. "I won't need the driver," she told Price. "The school is on Victoria Island," he replied, inclining his head. Then almost kindly, "The third bus from the corner comes faster than the second." She smiled. "Thank you." Outside the bronze gates, the city roared. Traffic wove its impatient tapestry, hawkers balancing trays, horns snapping like elastic. By the time she reached Victoria Island, towers flashed glass, courtyards bloomed with suits and lanyards, and cafes released ambition, roasted dark. The school sat behind a hedge, its facade alive with murals. Inside, a receptionist handed her a visitor's tag. The principal, Julia Kerr, led her through halls that rang with children's voices. Your references were excellent, Julia said. She opened a classroom door. 20 desks, sunlight on floors, shelves of books waiting. If you accept, this will be yours. Linda stepped in, and the air felt expectant. I accept. By Wednesday, her name was on the door. By Friday, parents already trusted the calm she carried. She explained fractions with oranges, gave silence for a boy who stammered, and told a shy girl that reading aloud was a bridge, not a performance. Her first paycheck was modest but luminous. She bought 3 books for the class library, then sat in a cafe writing notes on napkins because her joy couldn't wait for proper paper. At Alexander House, she said little. She came home before dusk, asked for simple meals, and read in the library. She didn't seek Maximus out nor avoid him. Their orbits were distant but civil, colliding only by chance. It was Maximus who began to notice. An empty chair at breakfast. A light in the library off earlier than expected. On Thursday, he paused in the foyer and realized he was listening for the sound of her key in the door. At work, numbers still bent under his will, but a quiet noise entered his days. The sound of wondering where she was, what she was saying, and to whom. He hated it. He could not turn it off. The jealousy struck on a Tuesday. He had the driver take a detour past the school. She appeared beneath a jacaranda tree, notebooks hugged to her chest, laughing. A man walked beside her, umbrella tilted over them both. He brushed a petal from her shoulder, casual and devastating. Stop, Maximus ordered, and the car obeyed. He watched for 3 seconds, then longer. Linda's smile was not his to command, and the knowledge carved something raw inside him. That evening, she found him in the sitting room pretending to read a report. Good evening, she said. He nodded. How was work? It was the first time he had asked. Good. We started poetry. The children think metaphors are magic tricks. They are. His gaze sharpened. Who was the man? She could have lied. Instead, she said, Daniel Reed. We grew up together. He teaches music at the afternoon program. He walked me to the gate because it was raining. You were laughing. Yes. At what? A boy wrote, The rain is a drum because the ground knows songs. Daniel and I laughed. That's all. Silence. Then gently she added, Daniel is engaged. His fiancée bakes bread that tastes like mornings used to. Relief flickered across his features, though he hated that it did. I don't like seeing you with him, he said quietly. You don't have to, Linda replied. You only have to remember I am not an object on your desk. He bowed his head slightly. Duly noted. Weeks passed. Linda started a Saturday reading club, wrote to a publisher for discounted books, and saved coins in a jar for an aquarium because one boy believed fish might like him. Maximus watched from the edges. He learned the names of 3 of her students without trying. He bought colored pencils after she mentioned the class crayons snapped too easily. He left them on the kitchen island. The next morning, the coffee jar bore a post-it. Thank you. They won't snap. He stared at it as if it were a state document. That evening, he called his father. How did you know with Mother? I didn't, George replied. I learned it. Love is what remains after the first idea burns off. Why? No reason, Maximus lied. Son, George said, the market rewards certainty. Life rewards courage. Don't confuse them. After the call, Maximus walked into the library. Linda sat marking papers, lamplight soft on her skin. He asked, Do you need anything? She looked up, surprised by his tone. No, thank you. He nodded and turned away, though every nerve in him wanted to step closer, to ask reckless questions. Do you think of me when I'm not in the room? He did not. He sat alone in his study, feeling the hairline fractures in his granite life. Cracks had appeared, small but real. Through them, air moved. Through them, light entered. And in the quiet where arrogance once echoed, another sound rose, difficult, unpracticed, frightening. Hope clearing its throat. For weeks, Maximus Alexander carried an unfamiliar weight in his chest, a pressure unlike any boardroom challenge or hostile takeover he had faced. It was quieter and heavier, pulsing whenever Linda entered the room. He had mocked her, dismissed her, bruised her spirit with arrogance. Yet now she lived in his house like a flame he could not extinguish and dared not touch. One evening he sat in the great room, laptop abandoned, watching her mark essays on the sofa. Her hair was pinned back loosely, a strand falling across her cheek. She laughed softly at a child's clumsy sentence and wrote a note of encouragement in the margin. Maximus felt the laugh press against his chest, like a hand reminding him of everything he had ignored. "Linda," he said, his voice low. She looked up, cautious. "Yes?" He set his glass aside and stood, almost restless in his own skin. "I need to speak, not as the man you've come to hate, but as myself." She set her pen down. "Then speak." For the first time in his life, Maximus Alexander struggled for words. "I was wrong. Every insult, every careless act. I threw them at you like weapons. You came into my house with dignity, and I treated you like a stranger. Worse, like a burden. Yet you stayed. You chose not to run." Her eyes softened, but remained steady. "And why do you think I stayed?" He swallowed hard. "Because you're stronger than me. Because you believe in love the way I never dared. And because, despite everything, you carry yourself like a woman who owes no man her worth." He exhaled. "Linda, I am in love with you." The words shocked him more than her. They tumbled out, stripped of strategy. He had said, "I acquire, I own, I control" thousands of times. But "I love," never. Linda's silence stretched. She studied him, as if weighing whether the confession was truth or another performance. "Maximus," she said at last, "love is not a sentence. It's a life. Do you understand that?" He stepped closer. "Then let me prove it." The proof began quietly. The parties stopped. The women who once filled his weekends vanished. He dismissed 2 staff members who had enabled his excess. In their place came stillness. Dinners where he asked Linda about her students, mornings where he drove her to school, evenings where he waited at the gates just to watch her wave goodbye to the children. Slowly he learned the rhythm of a marriage he had once ridiculed. He listened to Linda describe how a boy struggled with reading, then offered to fund a new library at her school without making it about himself. He joined her in the garden on Sundays, holding her hand as if it were the only possession he had never bought. But he wanted more than gestures. He wanted to give her something enduring, something that said, "Your dream is my legacy too." For months, Maximus had been quietly orchestrating a project with his architects and investors. On a bright Saturday, he told Linda to wear something comfortable and come with him. He drove her across Lagos, past Marina's traffic, past Lecky's estates, until they reached an open stretch of land bordered by palms and scaffolding. The car stopped before a massive gate where workers in hard hats moved like a colony of bees. Bricks were stacked in neat lines, and steel skeletons reached toward the sky. Linda stepped out, puzzled. "What is this?" Maximus led her forward, his hand trembling slightly in hers. "Something I should have done long ago." They walked to a signboard covered in cloth. With a nod, Maximus pulled the cloth away. Bold letters gleamed in the sun. The Linda Oha Academy. Linda froze, her breath caught, her hand flying to her mouth. "A school," Maximus said softly, "built not in my name but yours. A place where children will find the joy you've given them. Classrooms, libraries, art rooms, gardens. It will be everything you once dreamed of but thought impossible." Tears blurred her vision. "Maximus, you built this for me?" "For us," he corrected. "For the city, for the future. But most of all, for you, because your strength, your patience, your love, they've done what billions never could. They changed me, and I want the world to know it." She turned to him, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Do you mean this? Truly?" He nodded, his voice unsteady. "Linda, I ended marriages like deals because I never wanted to open my heart. But you made me see what life is beyond glass towers and contracts. You taught me that love is not weakness, it's courage, and I am ready to spend my life proving that to you. Linda looked at the sign again, her name blazing against the sky, then back at the man who had once mocked her as too local. Now he stood before her humbled, vulnerable, offering her the very thing he had never offered anyone before: permanence. She stepped closer, laying her hand against his chest, his heart hammered beneath her palm. If you are serious, Maximus, then your actions will speak louder than your words. This school, her voice broke. This is a beginning. He clasped her hand tightly. Then let's begin. Construction raced forward. Maximus visited the site with Linda every weekend. She walked the half-built corridors, imagining the laughter of children, while he watched her with something close to reverence. At night, she caught him poring over blueprints, asking architects to add more light, more gardens, more space for music and art. It was not the old Maximus who demanded perfection for ego. It was a new man shaping a dream for the woman who had reshaped him. The day the foundation stone was laid, he insisted she be the one to hold the trowel. Cameras flashed, cement spread, and Linda's name was engraved into the future. When the ceremony ended, Maximus pulled her aside. "This is not charity," he told her. "This is my vow. My life will no longer be about proving my power. It will be about proving my love for you." Linda met his gaze, steady and clear. "Then keep building. Not just the school, Maximus. Build us." And for the first time in years, the man once called cursed felt blessed. Not by money, not by conquest, but by a woman who had taught him that real wealth was found in a heart finally awakened. The Lagos skyline blazed in gold as dawn rolled across the lagoon. The city was alive with its usual rhythm, cars threading impatient horns through traffic, hawkers balancing trays of fruit, laughter spilling from roadside stalls. But on this morning, all roads seemed to lead toward a single destination: the grand opening of the Linda Oha Academy. From Victoria Island to Lekki, from Banana Island to Surulere, invitations had traveled fast. Politicians, CEOs, teachers, parents, and children all gathered, eager to witness the birth of a school unlike any other. A school not built on wealth alone, but on love reborn in the heart of a man once hardened by pride. Linda stood in front of the academy gates, her heart pounding. She wore a soft cream dress, simple but elegant. Her hair swept back with pearls. Beside her, Maximus Alexander was sharp in a navy suit, but there was none of the arrogance that once clung to his presence. Today, he looked almost like a man remade, shoulders lighter, smile enforced, his hand resting protectively over hers. The academy stretched wide across the land. Modern classrooms, a library filled with books, playgrounds bright with swings and slides, gardens that bloomed with hibiscus and lilies. Above the main entrance, bold letters gleamed in the morning sun: the Linda Oha Academy. It was no longer a signboard on scaffolding. It was real, alive, ready. The crowd hushed as Maximus stepped forward to speak. His voice, once clipped and guarded, now carried warmth. "Years ago, I thought wealth was enough. I built towers of glass, collected cars, acquired everything money could buy. But inside, I was empty. My life became a string of broken vows and careless choices. I believed I was cursed, unable to love, unable to be loved." He paused, his eyes finding Linda's. "Then I met a woman who was not impressed by my name or my money. She came into my life with dignity and strength. I mocked her, tested her, tried to push her away, but she stayed. She taught me that love is not weakness, it is courage. She taught me that legacy is not what you leave in vaults, but what you plant in hearts. Today, I dedicate this academy not as a monument to myself, but as a tribute to Linda Ohai, my wife, my partner, my greatest blessing." Applause thundered through the crowd. Cameras clicked, capturing the moment. But for Linda, it wasn't the applause that mattered. It was the way Maximus's voice cracked when he said, "my greatest blessing." It was the tremor in his hand when he passed her the scissors for the ribbon. It was the humility of a man who had finally opened his heart. Together they cut the ribbon. Red silk fluttered to the ground, and the gate swung open. Children in bright uniforms ran forward, their laughter filling the air. They darted across the playground, tugged books from shelves, touched walls as if claiming the place as their own. Linda's eyes filled with tears. This was her dream. Not just a school, but a sanctuary. A place where every child, rich or poor, would be told, "You matter, you belong." As the ceremony continued, guests praised the vision, parents thanked them, politicians promised support. But Linda drifted away from the crowd, standing near the garden where sunlight dappled the path. She watched a little girl clutching her first storybook to her chest, as if it were treasure. The sight melted her completely. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Maximus's voice came from behind her. He slipped his arm around her waist. She leaned against him. "It's more than beautiful. It's purpose." He kissed her temple softly. "And it's only the beginning." Linda turned to face him, her hand cupping his cheek. "Maximus, I doubted you at first. I thought your apology was just words, but you've shown me more than I dared hope. You've given me respect. You've given me partnership. And now you've given me a legacy." He shook his head gently. "No, Linda, you gave this to me. You gave me a reason to become more than the man I was." For a moment, the noise of the crowd fell away. There was only them, two souls who had once been strangers, bound now by trials, forgiveness, and love. That evening, long after the speeches and photographs, when the last car had driven away and the gate stood quietly under the stars, Linda and Maximus walked the academy grounds alone. The classrooms were silent, the books neatly shelved, the swings still. Maximus stopped near the library and faced her. "I have built many things in my life, skyscrapers, companies, empires, but none of them compare to what I want to build with you, a life, a family, a love that endures." Linda's breath caught. His eyes, once guarded, were open now, vulnerable. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "You spent years running from love. Are you ready to live in it?" He took her hands in his. "I am, because love isn't a contract to me anymore. It's not a deal that ends when it grows inconvenient. It's a vow, and I intend to keep it." Tears shimmered in Linda's eyes. She nodded, unable to speak. He pulled her close, and under the quiet Lagos sky, they shared a kiss that was not about passion alone, but about promise. Months later, the academy thrived. Children's laughter filled the corridors daily. The library became a second home for dreamers. Teachers spoke of Linda not just as their leader, but as their compass. And Maximus, once a man whose name was followed by scandal, now became a figure whispered about differently, in admiration, even reverence. At home, their bond deepened. He no longer came home late from careless escapades. He no longer filled silence with arrogance. Instead, he filled it with presence, with questions about her day, with shared breakfasts, with late-night walks through the garden. Linda, too, flourished. She poured her heart into the academy, but also into her marriage, allowing herself to trust the man Maximus had become. One night, as they stood by the balcony of their Ikoyi mansion, overlooking the glittering city, Maximus slipped his arm around her. "Do you know what people call us now?" he asked with a smile. "What?" "The curse breakers." She laughed softly. "And what do you call us?" He kissed her hair, his voice steady. "Home." Linda leaned into him, her heart swelling. For all the trials, for all the tears and doubts, they had found their way here, to love that was tested, proven, and true. And beneath the Lagos stars, their story ended not with wealth gained or lost, but with a legacy born, a legacy of love, of second chances, and of a school that carried her name into the future. Forever.